This will all be worth it, even if one life is saved. You'd hear this ridiculous statement every once in a while early in the pandemic. You don't hear it too much anymore, especially here in the United States. Why? Because Americans, by and large, have decided that we are willing to accept more death instead of giving up our freedom. Elsewhere on this channel, we've talked about the catastrophic COVID policies that the world has implemented over the last 2 years, how they've most certainly resulted in more deaths than they have saved. In some parts of the world, especially Australia, what a disappointment. Citizens have leaped hand in hand off the COVID cliff because they don't have the innate gut-level understanding that, as Milton Friedman said, there is no such thing as a free lunch. Even as our leaders throw doctored statistics at us and try to control our behavior and to try to make us afraid, most of us here in America are just not having it. Now, this is one of those rare cases where you actually cannot believe what your own eyes are telling you. COVID is, in my view, a serious disease that has likely killed many Americans. Knowing that, it can be difficult to come to the realization that if you focus too much on the here and now, you will end up hurting yourself in the end. Did we honestly think that we could shut down the economy of the entire world, restrict people's behavior, distort their perception of reality, make them suspicious and afraid of one another, and impose that same sick mindset on our children? Did we honestly think we could do all those things with no repercussions whatsoever? In some parts of the world, especially the originator of this entire mess, China, they're still doing it. Incredibly, they have been utterly unable to recognize the fact that their lockdowns are destroying their country and that this destruction is coming at a time when they can least afford it. What a terrible shame. Here in America, with some exceptions, obviously, I'm sure we all know a few, but as a people, we have had it up to here with the lockdowns. The fake news media and the mostly ignorant intellectuals of our society that choose to disregard American values would have you believe otherwise. But when the Democratic governor of Colorado announces that the COVID emergency is over and that it is time to get on with our lives, you know that the behavior control experiment is coming to an end and people are ready to move on. And this is important. We're willing to do this even though we realize and accept that some of us are going to die. This is what happens in a free society. We all make choices that are going to lead to better outcomes or worse outcomes or sometimes deadly outcomes. But the idea that each one of us individually should be free to make those choices for ourselves is so innately American, it cannot be overcome by any means at the disposal of our so-called leaders. Or when you come here, under whatever circumstances you come, there is a feeling, once you step on this soil, that things are different. And this can be frightening, but also exhilarating, because most people coming to America are not coming here to have someone else take care of them. They're coming because they've had enough of being controlled and stifled and manipulated. They want something new. Political scientists frequently say that societies must balance freedom with security. The vast majority of the time, and especially during COVID, this is an absolutely false choice. What countries have actually done during COVID is balance freedom with the appearance of security. There's very little evidence that any of the behavior control techniques implemented by world leaders had any positive effect whatsoever. And there's voluminous evidence of the damage that has been done by these policies. One of the biggest disappointments during this entire debacle has been the country I mentioned previously, Australia. I've been around a bit, but I've never been there. And going into COVID, I had this admittedly uninformed and naive sense that Australians were tough-minded and courageous individuals. I know now that nothing could be further from the truth. And the weird thing is, I don't think this is necessarily a situation where individual Australians themselves are a bunch of cowards, but they lack the inherent baseline understanding that freedom, for lack of a better term, is not free. That it comes with choices, and sometimes that despite our best efforts, we make the wrong choices, and things go badly. This is a situation endemic, not just to us, but every living thing on the planet. Australians are missing the software that tells them, as a people, there is literally nothing more important than their freedom, and that includes their life. They don't have the inherent understanding that when someone offers them a choice between their freedom and their security, they should be very, very suspicious of that person's intentions. They've learned, as far as I can tell, absolutely nothing from COVID, and they're primed to make the same mistakes over and over and over again. It's a similar situation with our neighbors to the north. On January 5th of this year, not March 2020, this year, the Toronto Maple Leafs played the Edmonton Oilers at Scotiabank Arena in Toronto. They played in an empty arena with players wearing masks on the bench, just prior, by the way, to smashing their faces into other players' unmasked faces when they entered the rink. 1 week later, this same Toronto team played the Arizona Coyotes at Gila River Arena in Glendale, Arizona. They played the Coyotes in a space with no vaccine or testing or mask requirements. They played in front of a legion of screaming fans who seemed not to care one whit about the supposedly deadly choice they were making by going to a hockey game. Here in the United States, they fooled us once during 2020, but they are not going to fool us again. We have learned from our mistakes, and although our leaders and the elites would have you believe otherwise, we are not going to make the same mistake again. In closing, I'm going to borrow a turn of phrase from the Aussies who respond to criticism of their COVID approach with statements like, "But we have fewer deaths, mate." That may be true. But if you are willing to give up your freedom for a little less death, mate, you are going to find yourself in the end with a lot less life.